Hello and welcome back to Catalyze Yourself. I'm your host, Gayatri, and today we are arriving at a quiet but powerful threshold in our journey. This episode is about conscious presence and peace, not as some ideal concept to chase, but as an inner state we can return to again and again with intention and care. And why do I say that? Because peace is not the absence of challenges and obstacles, and presence is not about passively waiting for life to slow down or everything to just magically fix itself. Peace of mind, the kind that lasts, comes from within you, and its creator is you. It emerges when your thoughts and emotions and awareness are no longer in conflict with each other, and it comes when your mind is not at war with itself. So let's start by grounding us by what we mean when we say peace of mind. As I was sharing with you, it is not just calm, and it is not zoning out, and it is not avoiding what is happening or even pretending that everything is okay. Peace of mind is a true inner state of alignment. It is what happens when the three parts of your mind, your cognition, your emotion, and your consciousness, begin to work together instead of pulling you in different directions. When your cognition does not try to control you or overanalyze what's happening, when your emotions are acknowledged and felt and they're allowed to pass, and when your consciousness across its layers of conscious, their subconscious and the unconscious, is no longer resisting what is and is fully, gracefully, completely, and gently aware of what is happening, all of it. Peace is recognizing a pattern from your subconscious, a habit, a belief, a reaction, and saying, I understand why that was there, but I do not need to choose from it anymore. It is choosing not to penalize yourself for how you once survived or for the moments you still fall back to those patterns. Peace leaves no room for regret. It leaves room only for recognition, redirection, and release. And when fear arises from the unconscious, unnoticed, uninvited, unannounced, but still feels deeply familiar, peace does not pretend it didn't show up. Peace does not turn away, run away, or deny that it is happening. Peace meets it with compassion and presence. Peace traces it gently, asking, where did this begin? And is it still true now? Peace learns to soothe what once overwhelmed you, not by suppressing, but by understanding, so we can see clearly when we confuse survival with identity. It is the quiet choosing of awareness over reactivity, truth over projection, presence over performance. And this is what opens the door to conscious presence, and through it, peace. So, if you've ever asked yourself, why can't I just feel calm even when I know what to do? Why do I spiral into anxiety and stress even when things seem okay? What would it feel like to be present and not just perform calmness, but actually experience it? Then this episode is for you, and I would love for you to stay with me. Back in episode 8, we introduced the SIRE model to you. It's your blueprint for conscious leadership, and it's built on 4 foundational elements that shape how we lead ourselves: self-awareness, self-inspiration, self-regulation, and self-expression. Since then, we've been walking through what it really means to live those elements and how we notice, how we decide, how we act, how we align. But self-leadership does not happen in theory. It happens in real time, in moments when presence feels somewhere far away, feels distant, when tension comes up, when we forget what we know and we drift into what we've always done. And that's when we begin to work with the 3 supporting frameworks that arise from SIRE and bring it into practice. These frameworks are HALT, RISE, and SHIFT. These 3 frameworks form the next layer, the living rhythm of how we move through life using SIRE as our internal compass. So let us start with the first framework, HALT. This is our call to notice when we have moved away from presence. HALT gives us the signals, the honest mirror that says, pause here. Something in you is calling for attention. So now, let's explore what HALT looks like and how these moments are not just interruptions, but invitations. HALT is the first doorway into presence because it asks you to stop and notice what's pulling me away from myself right now. And in the context of the SIRE model, HALT shows us where one or more of our self-leadership capacities is being disrupted. So, HALT, H-A-L-T. Let's start with H, for hesitation. When you hesitate over a conversation, a choice, a truth you need to express, it is often rooted in fear of failure or rejection. You begin to second guess your own knowing. This impacts your self-inspiration because your inner spark dims when doubt takes over. It also weakens self-expression because you begin to withhold, silence yourself, or minimize your truth. Okay, now let's move into A in HALT, avoidance, which can look like delay, distraction, overscheduling, even over helping others. Without presence or pause to notice it, this will cut you off from your own reflection, so you do not even recognize what you're doing. This is a breakdown of self-awareness. You stop listening inward because what's there feels too heavy, too uncertain, or just simply too uncomfortable for you. And then there's the L in HALT, lack, scarcity. You feel there simply isn't enough, not enough time, enough space, enough energy, enough clarity, enough love. So you push harder, or you pull away, or you freeze, or you compare. This creates an internal urgency and a constriction. And in the end, you feel unhappy, miserable, wretched. This directly impacts your self-regulation because when your nervous system believes there isn't enough, it cannot anchor. It cannot feel grounded. It becomes reactive. And where you want it to be is at peace and responsive. And finally, the T in HALT, tiredness. It's not just physical fatigue, it's emotional or energetic depletion. You find yourself numbing, zoning out, avoiding depth. You're overcapacitated, overwhelmed by life. Tiredness affects every part of SIRE, but especially self inspiration and self regulation, because when you're running on empty, your inner voice is getting drowned out by noise, and your ability to stay steady disappears. Here's the truth about HALT. Most of the time, we don't notice these signals until after we've already left presence. However, once we learn to recognize it real time with presence, without judgment, we begin to create space. And this space is what allows us to return to ourselves. So let's go there next. Let's explore how we rise from where we were and how we return to our presence with rhythm, compassion, and clarity. Rise helps us reactivate our self-regulation to ground our nervous system. It reactivates our self-awareness to observe without judgment. It reactivates our self-inspiration so we can connect with purpose. And ultimately, it reactivates our self-expression so we can re-enter our present moment with clarity and alignment. Rise is a process that brings you back to yourself, and it is not about perfection. It is about reconnection through your awareness across your body, your emotions, your values, and your choices. Each element of Rise calls forward a different aspect of self-awareness, and together they restore your presence and prepares you for peace. So let's start with the R in Rise, recognition. Presence begins not with doing, but with noticing. Recognition is that quiet moment when you say, something just shifted in me. I feel off. My breath just sped up or got shallow. My thoughts just started moving faster. It's not about solving. It is about just noticing, about seeing. Before you can regulate or return or realign, we must first recognize what's happening. Now let's move into the I in Rise, intention. Once you recognize, you ask yourself, how do I want to show up in this moment? What matters the most right now? Intention reconnects you to your self-inspiration. It is not about fixing the situation. It is about choosing who you want to be in the midst of it. Intention does not need to be grand. It just needs to be true. I intend to stay soft. I intend to speak clearly. I intend to hold steady. When that old urge says, react. When you lead with intention, you anchor your presence in purpose, and your nervous system begins to follow that steadiness. Your intention is just not about thoughts, they are signals to your brain. Your brain's executive system, the prefrontal cortex, and acting that part of your neurocircuitry that regulates emotion, inhibits impulse, and aligns your action with your higher purpose. When your intention is clear, your nervous system can organize around it. And in that moment, you're not just present, you're leading yourself. This is your self-inspiration in action. It is how your values speak through your choices without needing approval or proof. Now let's move to the S in Rise. Senses. This element of the framework reminds you that even when your mind drifts into anxiety, overthinking, fear, your body has never left the present moment. Your body holds your senses, and your senses are your doorway back to presence. In the moments where the internal noise rises, when thoughts loop or overwhelm builds up in your mind, gently shift your attention outward to your physical senses. What do you see right now? What do you hear? Can you feel your breath, the air on your skin, or the surface beneath your feet? This is not a distraction. It is redirection of your attention, a rerouting of your focus away from emotional reactivity centers of your brain and towards the tactical sensory systems that ground you in the here and now. When you bring your awareness to your senses intentionally, you are now activating your prefrontal cortex, the part of that brain that is responsible for regulation and decision making. So when you anchor and ground yourself through your senses, you are interrupting the loop of reactivity and sending a physiological signal to your body. We are not in the past. We are not in the future. We are safe in the now. This self-regulation brings your mind and body into harmony. Consider your physical senses as bridges between your thinking, your feeling, and your entire being. And in those moments where peace feels so far away, your senses can walk you right back to your center, to your peace. And finally, the E in RISE, evaluation. This is the one we are most often likely to skip or misuse, because for many of us, evaluation has become synonymous with judgment, with scrutiny, with replaying moments to find the flaw. But here, evaluation is something completely different. It's not punitive. It is not punishment. It is not perfectionism either. It is a gentle, honest practice of self-leadership through introspection. This is the moment within the experience where you ask, am I here? Am I in my body, in my breath, my intention, or have I drifted again? Introspection is not analysis, it's attuning yourself. You're staying in the awareness within yourself while you're still in the moment. You're tracking, where is my energy going right now? Is my tone still connected to my intention? Is my body relaxed or is it bracing? This is how you calibrate in real time. And this is how you shift out of autopilot so that your actions, your expression, and your energy remains in alignment with your awareness. And when you practice evaluation as introspection, without shame, without the need for immediate correction, you stay in flow with your self-regulation and self-awareness, not reacting, not abandoning, just noticing and adjusting moment by moment. Because the most profound presence doesn't come from never drifting. It comes from learning how to notice and then return with grace again and again. When we take our awareness and begin practicing presence on purpose, we are practicing grace, because grace lives where awareness is followed by action. It is one thing to notice where we have drifted. It is another to rise and shift again. That is what shift gives us. Where HALT reveals and rise returns, shift integrates. It's where presence becomes practice. It is the quiet moment where you no longer just observe your inner world, you begin to live from it. Shift is the final integrative move. It is not about challenging your thoughts, it's about choosing how you show up again and now with clarity, intention, and congruence. It is about choosing the quiet, conscious act of staying present by practicing presence. The S in shift stands for stop. This stop is not the same as the pause and rise. This is not just checking in. This is a command and a consistent reminder to your nervous system. We are not returning to the old pattern. We are holding the awareness and doing something new with it. Once you've gained awareness, your system, your entire being, your subconscious will want you to go back to what's familiar, the pattern it knows. This stop interrupts that pull. It breaks the magnetic pull of the subconscious to go into familiar patterns. It's the ease of autopilot. This is a conscious halt that says, we're done, we've done the inner work, and now we're choosing to live from it. This is where you plant your feet, still your momentum, and you anchor your nervous system in the here and the now before it slips back into some type of conditioned loop that exists in your subconscious. And something else powerful happens here. When you stop with presence, you make space for something deeper. You begin to listen to the messages from your unconscious, the subtle signals behind the words, the logic, and the habits. This is where you hear that tension in my chest is fear I have not acknowledged. That panic in my mind is urgency rooted in scarcity. My anticipation of not having enough, lack. That resistance I'm feeling is protecting an older version of me. This stop is not passive, it is active presence. It is the first step in practicing peace, where awareness is not just observed, it is protected. Once you've stopped, once you've interrupted the urge to return to default, the next step is to bring clarity to what you're now holding. And that's what highlight gives you, the H in shift. Highlight is that moment you say, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what's present in me. This is the thought or belief I've been carrying, and this is the emotion it is tied to. You're not rushing to change anything. You're not jumping into action or positivity. You're simply saying, this is what is true for me right now. Highlighting is an act of facing the truth in you. When you name what's present, you stop projecting it onto others. When you stop internalizing as something to hide or ignore, you give it form. It is no longer this mysterious unknown. And once it has form, now you can work with it. This might sound like I'm carrying the belief that if I don't handle this perfectly, I'll be seen as less capable. Or it could be there's anxiety. I'm having anxiety, and I think it's about not being heard. These highlights are not flaws. They're not judgment. They're guides. They help you bring presence to what's actually there, not what you're pretending to feel or what someone else has told you should feel. And here's the deeper truth. When you highlight with presence, your nervous system begins to settle because you're no longer avoiding, reacting, or suppressing. You are witnessing. And witnessing without judgment is one of the most compassionate ways you can lead yourself. This is where your presence becomes so rooted in honesty and where the shift begins to take shape. Having said all that, you might be wondering, didn't I already recognize what I was feeling back in Rise? And the answer is yes and no. Recognition is the first step in awareness. It's where you notice something has shifted. It's that quiet something's off. Often you feel it in your body or in your breath before it even has words. But highlight is where you put a spotlight on it. Again, not with judgment, just to see the nature of it. It's where presence becomes conscious articulation. And it's where you name what is now visible and clear. You give form to what was just a signal before. So recognition would say, I feel a charge. Highlight would say that charge is tied to fear of being dismissed. And this shift matters because once you name something, you no longer have to defend against it. You can meet it, you can hold it, and you can move through it with choice. Once you've stopped to break the pattern and highlighted what is truly present in you, the next step is not to fix or to quickly move forward. It is to integrate. This is the I in shift, the middle. This is where you ask, what part of what I have just uncovered do I need to carry with me to this moment? What part of me is asking to be honored, not just witnessed, but lived? Integration is not performance. It is not about choosing the right thing to do or say next. It is about letting your insight settle into your being so that your next step reflects who you actually are, not who you've been conditioned to be. Integration is what brings presence from our nervous system into your next action. It bridges your self-awareness with self-leadership. This is where peace becomes behavior. An example in real life could be choosing a softer tone after realizing your urgency was fear-based. So you go, you go through the process, you recognize, you go through the halt, you come to the rise, and you get to the integration and you're like, wait, and then you choose a softer tone. Slowing your breath before you speak because your body told you it wasn't ready, saying, can we revisit this later? This is not for you to escape. It is because you want to respond with alignment and not rush with a reaction based on stress or adrenaline. Integration is your recalibration. It is your presence flowing into your posture, your timing, your words, your silence. It is the difference between knowing who you are and embodying it in the next breath. This is where shift begins to feel visibly different. Not just internally steady, but it becomes externally true. Once you've integrated, once you've listened to what is real and allows it to shape who you are being, the next movement, action is flow. This comes in through the F in shift. This is where presence returns to action, not in a rush, not to prove, not to keep up, but to continue with alignment. It is to choose to re-enter that moment from a calm, grounded place that your integration just showed you. This is important because this allows you to participate in life without abandoning yourself. Flow state for you could look like speaking from your calm, even when the room is noisy. Returning back to the task, but without the frantic energy you started with. Choosing to engage from your values, not your wounds. In the energy of flow, there is no forcing. There is movement, but it is informed by your integrated self. And here's what's beautiful. When you flow from presence, people feel it. Your communication shifts. Your timing adjusts. Your nervous system stays open. And most importantly, you stay with yourself. This is how peace becomes something that moves with you, not something you find only in silence, but something you bring into your action and your voice. And now, the final and perhaps the most overlooked part of this process, trust, which makes the T in shift. Because even when you have stopped the pattern, even when you have named what's true, even when you've chosen to move differently, there is an internal voice that could be quietly asking, did that even matter? Was that enough? I keep trying and not getting it quite right. Why am I bothering? This is coming from your unconscious and your habitual self-talk coming from your subconscious. And this is urging you to reframe how you work with your growth. And that is why we end shift, not with another action, but with trust. Trust in you. Trust in your unique process of growth. Trust is the container that holds the progression that you will make with gentleness, with grace, with gratitude. It's the moment you remind yourself, because I paid attention, I shifted something. Because I honored myself, I showed up differently. Because I chose presence, I stayed in integrity. And there's an important shift you'll make with this trust you build in yourself. You will find that it is no longer external confirmation that validates any part of you. And the peace you find in not trying to keep up with external expectations is immeasurable. And this allows for you to allow your peace to deepen, not through perfection, but through consistency, through returning to presence over and over again. Even if it looks messy, even if it looks quiet, even if no one else notices it but you. This is what nervous system safety is built on. Trusting that small shifts count. Trusting that new patterns take time. Trusting that the self you're becoming is worth staying with. And when you trust the shift, it's not just practicing peace, you're becoming peace. This full arc of halt, rise, and shift that comes from the foundation of the SIRE model is how each of us can walk a path with presence that takes us to peace, regardless of the chaos that we might be surrounded by. So let's walk through what that could look like for you with a real moment example. Let's say you're about to enter a conversation, maybe with a colleague, a loved one, a client. It's a conversation you've had many times before. And perhaps in the past, it's not been something that was a pleasant experience. And somewhere in your body, you already feel it, that hesitation, a fatigue that says, oh no, not this again. This is your halt moment, your pause and ask, am I hesitating? Am I avoiding? I'm feeling a lack of what it would take to deal with this moment. Am I tired emotionally, mentally, spiritually? This awareness is not a signal to retreat. It is a signal for you to return. So next, you begin to rise. You start with recognition. My breath just shortened. I felt my shoulders tighten. Something in me is getting ready. It's bracing. Now you move to intention. What is your intention? I want to lead this moment from clarity, not defensiveness. And that intention connects you back to your senses. Let's say you feel the toes on your feet, just move it. You suddenly shift your attention to the movement of your toes of your feet. You feel your breath as you slow it down. You remind your body, We are not in danger. We are here. We can stay. And then you evaluate what used to pull me into a reaction here, and what can I do differently this time? And then you see, rise brings you back to presence. And this brings the opportunity for you to now live it. So you shift. You stop before you respond and choose differently from your patterns. I'm choosing not to fall back into the old loop. You highlight what's real. There's fear here. There's discomfort here. The old belief that I need to prove myself. And you integrate that awareness. Because I see this, I can choose to respond with grounded clarity. And you flow back into the conversation, this time from truth, not stress, not tension. You speak from alignment, not anxiety. You listen with your full presence, not your rehearsed defenses. And then you trust. You don't overanalyze or seek validation. You simply acknowledge that was different. That was conscious. That was peace in motion. And that's what it looks like and feels like to live this growth, to building presence and peace. It is not a performance. It is not perfection. It is a practice of self leadership. You will not do it flawlessly every time, and you will be at peace with it regardless. And the more you do it intentionally, the more it becomes who you are. I've given a lot in this episode that I really, really am grateful for the chance to have shared with you. And now we have reached the close of today's episode. So before we move forward, let's take a moment and pause and ground ourselves in what we've uncovered today. We have dived into presence and peace, not as fixed destination, but as lived experiences, not just felt in silence, but chosen and sustained in noise, in decisions, in the patterns we return to, or the patterns we release. Today we explored how the HALT framework reveals itself when you've drifted from self through hesitation, avoidance, lack, or tiredness. We looked at how rise brings you gently back through recognition, intention, senses, and evaluation, and how shift becomes the way presence takes shape through stop, highlight, integrate, flow, and trust. Together, these framework gives you a rhythm, one that connects awareness to action, and insight to yourself, your embodiment. This is how you practice conscious presence. So here's what I invite you to reflect on this week. What signal from HALT do you most often miss? And is there a way you can start noticing it sooner? Where can you rise? Not in productivity, but in presence. And when you catch yourself aware but unanchored, what would it look like to shift gently and on purpose? Let this be the rhythm you walk this week. Notice, return, embody. And if you do, even in the small, quiet moments, I would love to hear about it. Your experience creates an impact in this world all around you, and I would love to learn about it. So share what opens up for you. Reach out, DM me, leave a note on the platform where you're listening. Let's keep learning from each other. And next week, we expand this work outward from inner alignment to external leadership. In episode 12, Conscious Leadership, we explore what happens when presence becomes your power and how the SIRE model with the framework of HALT, rise, and shift can be a most effective guide to not just lead yourself, but to lead others with clarity, integrity, and depth. Because conscious leadership is not something you turn on for a role. It is something you embody from the inside out. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Gayatri, and I'm so grateful for the space we share here. Until we meet again, keep building your awareness, keep choosing to live from conscious presence, and keep returning to peace. One breath, one shift, one aligned moment at a time.